What's up, Rockstars? Welcome to my review of Marvel Zombies. This is the Heroes Resistance version. This is $35 retail, and this is the game, and this is my thoughts. Thank you to my channel sponsor Into the AM. As a company that believes hard work and a great product is a proper way to conduct business, I am delighted to have them as part of the channel. They have some of the coolest graphic t-shirts around and an absolute best fit and feel that has continually exceeded my expectations. With new shirts arriving all the time and other products like boxers, hats, and even a monthly shirt club, I wholeheartedly recommend them to you. Check out the link in my description of this video for an exclusive 10% off everything they sell. Now, the big elephant in the room is actually, I think, the IP, the Marvel Zombies IP in particular, and I must say, I think it is very well used here. In this version, you do play as the superheroes fighting against waves of zombies and zombie heroes that have turned really bad. Now, with that, I think the IP just really helps a game like this. Zombicide is very much a beer and pretzels style game where you're chucking dice, killing zombies, leveling up, getting cooler stuff to use, like different abilities and stuff like that, and then going about your day, having a lot of fun with friends and family. Everybody pretty much knows the Marvel license, and I think it's very well used here. As an example, here is my Hulk, and you'll notice that we have Pepper Potts here actually puttied onto his hand because my daughter saved her and decided to have Hulk just carry her. This is through the whole mission. So, you know, it's great that everybody kind of knows these characters. They're all fairly well-known characters, and you can just have a lot of fun with the IP that I think really adds to the experience, especially this type of experience. Now, the first experience you have with this game, however, besides the unboxing, we'll talk about storage, I think, towards the end, but is actually the rulebook. You got to read the rulebook before you can play the game, right? The rulebook is competently done. It does have an index. It does have examples of, you know, what you're doing and how movement works and stuff like that. If there is one complaint, I would say it's that I think for a brand new player, this could still use a little bit of help. For instance, I don't recall it ever actually describing that the crosswalk sections that you see on the map tile are different zones. It's very obvious in the rooms what the zones are. They're colored differently and they have walls. But in the street level, it's the crosswalks. You just kind of either have to infer that or know it from previous experience. I don't think it's actually mentioned here. But overall, this is a plus. It's quick to read. This has all the missions in it as well. It has a little help thing on the back, so you can keep it there on the table. The table footprint isn't too bad on this game at all. This is my smaller table to use this on. So having the rulebook be this size isn't too big of an issue on the table. And overall, I think it's just competently done. Now, I think a question many of you will have, and so I'm going to try and answer that right now, is this a full Zombicide experience? As somebody who has played, I believe, every single version up until the Western version, the Undead or Alive, I must say I feel this is completely the Zombicide experience, just in a very much smaller form factor. And I think that's really great. They made a lot of smart changes to it. For instance, the zombie minis, instead of getting 300 million of those, you get the Standees, and then the hero cards are like this now with a little slider instead of like some plastic tray, where all that. There's some streamlining that's been done throughout Zombicide's kind of progress when it comes to how many cards you need and stuff like that. And like equipment's been removed here and replaced with hero traits, but that's the full box size one you'll get from Command directly as well. So the main differences I see here, besides, using like a spinner for the XP and a little card with some trackers on the card, is mostly just variety. The miniatures here, we'll talk about variety and those miniatures, or lack of, in the Standees. And that's mostly it. Otherwise, it's the full experience. Oh, and it only supports 4 players instead of 6. So if you are somebody who played Zombicide many times at 5-player and 6-player, this is not the version for you. It does only support 4. But overall, I mean, it felt just like playing Zombicide with no corners cut. All of this stuff is cosmetic. This is not mechanical. So otherwise, it's you playing Zombicide, the Marvel Zombies version of it. Now, let's talk about content, right? Because you can kind of see the table spread here. This is everything, by the way. This is the whole game here. There's another player set up there. So there's a few other heroes you could pick from, but really that's it. The content is actually wonderful. Like I said, there are missions in here. There is a variety of missions, and they're fun, and they're, hard 45 minutes, medium 60 minutes. You have the another medium 60 minutes. You got the tutorial one, right? There's about, I believe, 9 or 10. This is mission 8, and then there's the tutorial. So about 9 missions, not quite the 10 I think we're used to, but overall, still plenty of content here. The map variety is actually really good. I was worried about that with there only 4 map tiles. And then, of course, they're double-sided. But, like, this mission in particular was actually kind of fun. It's the last one we played, and it's the one I've enjoyed the most so far. And this one, the setup was that there's kind of this center lane of a street with 4 spawn points in here, and then 1 at the beginning. The one at the beginning is supposed to chase you down that way, and then this is supposed to muck up this middle section, because you start with 3 characters here, and 1 character at random in the middle in the street with all the zombies. And then you also pre-assign 2 different bystanders, and the objective is to get those people with those bystanders over through the exit on the right-hand side, which means you have to cross through the deadly 4 spawn zone street. So it's very competently done, I feel, because especially with the nuance of having the spawn zone here in the middle or in the starting to help kind of push the players through. They can't just dawdle around here. They really have to go because they're coming from behind and then in the middle. I think that was really smart. Additionally, the last zone or the last building is closed off. So when you open it, you have to spawn zombies inside of that. So again, just very smartly done in a cool little scenario where it's splitting off the group and you got to cross this crazy path. Meanwhile, there's spawns everywhere and it looks hopeless. And that's exactly how I like my Zombicide. So it was a great experience and a kind of a testament to not only the amount of content you have here, which is about average. It's not the most, but they're very highly replayable. Though we'll get to replay here soon as well. But just how well they're made, the quality of it. This was a very nice one, I felt. Now, there's one con that I've had in every single Zombicide review I've ever done that I won't have here, and that is the zombie bloat. So in the normal issue, what you have is there are so many zombies assigned to one zone that they spill out of the zone. And the rule set of any Zombicide I've ever read does not accommodate that. They don't say what to do with that. So I just have them like hanging over and you just have to remember that they're there. But then if you have 2 big groups, I mean, you can kind of see like this big group and then this big group here, like it starts to really have an issue. But normally those are miniatures. These are standees with smaller bases. And as such, I never once, even with this one where we have almost every single zombie in the game on the board, did we have an issue where there wasn't really enough space. And because they're standees, they're easier to move. So one of the things in Zombicide is you essentially activate a zone and those zombies all move. But it's a lot easier to grab a whole bunch and move them than it is all the miniatures. You just can't grab as many. They kind of lock together too much. All these are rounded edges, whereas they'll have like outstretched arms, stuff like that. It just gets really messy and kind of bogs down the experience. This is a very fast-paced, very streamlined game. And then you have this section where you're having to update the map with a whole bunch of zombies. They're all minis, and I love minis. You guys know that. However, minis are, in fact, not just for painting, at least on a board game, but they are a board game component. And as such, they should accommodate the gameplay of that. And the gameplay of this is a whole bunch of zombies, and you're moving a whole bunch of them all at once. And standees just simply work better for that. Now, I know often I comment because I see the side of a standee, and I don't like that. So if you're veterans of the channel, first of all, thanks for sticking by. But also, you'll know that's a complaint of mine. But because there are so many, that's very rarely an issue here. In fact, I never had a zone where there weren't a whole bunch of zombies facing me. Even right now, like there's 3 here that I see the angle of, but then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more that I see. So it just looks like a bunch of zombies either way. And so for this gameplay, for this scenario, and I was looking for it, it never once was really that big of an issue. So overall, I think the benefits outweigh the loss of the miniatures. Not even talking about the price and storage, which we'll kind of discuss in a little bit. But yeah, overall, I think the standees for zombies are actually a very smart idea, and I think it plays better and becomes a better game because of it. Now, of course, as with anything, nothing is perfect, and there are some issues. First of all, you'll note that there aren't really items in this game. That's because each character has kind of their own thing. So Wasp has a Wasp sting, Spider-Man has this acrobatics, Black Panther has this vibranium claws, and so that is kind of their item, their weapon, and that's what they use. By and large, you could get some other characters in there that, would kind of swap weapons, but for the most part, they're using their abilities, and that's what they're doing. And then they have their kind of abilities here and their power, and we'll talk about that, but there aren't really a lot of items, but you can still loot because you have these heroic traits. And these heroic traits allow you to do different things, and you get a random amount of them, 1 or 2, depending, like Vision can get more and choose one, stuff like that, right? And so you can kind of get this, and you can do it anywhere in the street, whatever, you're searching for, some untapped potential, whatever, and you get a heroic trait, and oh my gosh, you're courageous, and that means you get to do something. Or you're courageous again. I didn't even actually fake that, so that's perfect. That's kind of leading me into this. This is not a sufficient replacement for items because there's just not the variety. If you've ever played Zombicide and you do get a time where you're like, oh man, I just pulled like 3 Uzis in a row, or, whatever, or a frying pan, or whatever it might be, it can be kind of a bummer. But when we were going here, we eventually kind of stopped doing this just because you will get stuff like this where, okay, now there's agile, let's see if it'll go again. And then an ambush. So see, it's just like looting an item where you can get ambush, resourceful. There's a couple different variety in here. You can see that in the unboxing I did, but you often get repeats. And even then, with the whole team doing that, you've seen them all very quickly. There's not really a whole lot of hidden stuff in there. But the rarest thing is probably that ambush, actually. So I didn't really get enough oomph out of this to really feel like it was worth it. I think it's a great idea, but I would need a lot more variety of them, I feel, to really feel like I want to keep searching for one. With items, you really want to get those rare items that you can sometimes get that are clearly better, but there isn't any here that are really clearly better for you. It doesn't really match any kind of builds you can do, and just overall, it doesn't really change your character a lot. Whereas in the Zombicide proper, you can be like, oh, I played that character, but I had 2 katanas and I was just dual wielding them because I looted those and they were awesome. Or, oh yeah, well, I got the special chainsaw item that was like named, and so I just went and chainsawed with that character, and that character can feel a little bit different there. You get some of that in the Bystanders, which we will definitely talk about here shortly. But overall, just I wasn't feeling the heroic traits. So we ended up to stop doing it. It wasn't really worth an action. And sadly, that's probably leading to my very largest negative of this entire experience, and that was just the overall lack of variety. Look, this is a $35 game with an IP, with miniatures. I'm not saying it's necessarily a bad deal. In fact, I say the opposite of that. However, the lack of variety is probably the one thing that hurts us the most. This, I don't mind. Heck, even getting rid of items to do this, I don't totally mind. I don't think that breaks it. But the variety is kind of lacking. Now, the missions, there's plenty of missions. However, there are only 4 zombie heroes, and you could see them all on your second mission, and you've seen them all. We'll talk about them and their uniqueness here shortly, but that's all you get. You're only spawning runners, walkers, and brutes, and that's it. It's just these 3 enemies over and over and over again. One of the nice things about the Kickstarter exclusives, as long as you try and balance it yourself, in other words, you stretch goal heroes with stretch goal monsters, is the monster variety, the fact that you get different kinds of enemies to spawn out. Now, I'm gonna, at the very end of the video, talk about a possible solution to that, so stay tuned for that, please. But it's just kind of a bummer to get that. There are only 6 heroes, so only 2 you aren't using at any time. So, and with the lack of build variety with items and stuff like that, playing a Wasp just always feels like playing a Wasp, and there's nothing you can do to kind of add a different flavor to that, if that makes sense. So it gets kind of old soon. You're not drawing that spawn card like, oh my gosh, it's this thing. Oh, look, it's more walkers. There's some nice additions like rushes and stuff like that. So I don't want to completely negate some of the excitement of drawing things. But just overall, after playing so many missions, you've kind of seen it all, right? I mean, you're not doing really anything unique when it comes to the characters and who you're fighting. Just more of the situation on the map and kind of having fun with friends and family, which is great. But yeah, the variety is really lacking, and would love to see that variety go up because otherwise, I mean, even the Bystanders, you see them pretty quickly, and then you've seen them all. And so I saw the Bystanders within 3 missions. And so then the other ones are just spawning those same bystanders over and over and over again. Gets a little lackluster. Speaking of bystanders, let's go and get that out of the way. It's another negative, actually. I kind of like the heroic traits. I feel like I like the idea of bystanders, but the implementation is kind of lacking. So if you didn't know, a bystander is kind of like a named citizen. So someone like a J. Jonah Jameson or Pepper Potts or, somebody like that, right? That like people will kind of know, from either the comics or the Marvel Cinematic Universe or whatever, that actually benefit the hero. So you kind of like equip them. So you can save a bystander and then you have them here. This is Sharon Carter. This is J. Jonah Jameson, and that is with that character. And they give you kind of an ability that you can do. For instance, Sharon Carter here says, after performing a ranged attack, you may spend 1 power to reroll any misses. You gain a power at the start of each of your turns, or you can actually kind of power up and gain 2 as an action. And you can do that as many times as you want. You can hold up to 4. So, in other words, you can roll a ranged attack, and then you can spend 1 power to reroll any misses. That's very powerful. However, that really only helps ranged people, which means ranged people want her, whereas there's another person that does the exact same thing for melee who want them. My point here is that they're not really providing any actual variety. They're just offering a buff to you. But there's a specific one where you'd be like, I don't want that character, does nothing for me. Or like, oh, it could do a free melee attack. Well, you know what? I'm supposed to be ranged. I don't really even want that anyway. And somebody who's already melee should just be able to attack twice. And so it's just a better pick for them. So you kind of have this hero is paired with this bystander, and then that's it. And that's kind of a wasted potential, I feel. I would have loved, between the heroic traits and between the bystanders, to really kind of almost have a build option where it's like, you know what I really like? I really like playing Peter Parker, but I really like pairing Peter Parker with Sharon Carter, and then also getting him the courageous trait and having it actually be meaningful. I can say that, but it doesn't actually really change much. So it would have been very nice to really, and that's what I was kind of hoping, was these bystanders, I keep saying that wrong, would really spice things up and change things up and make my character feel different from mission to mission. But no, we just went with the same ones over and over again because that's the obvious choice and there's not really a reason to do anything else. It's not a really significant one. And, they're not really, having you do anything special really anyway. It just rerolls stuff like that. Now, one of the great things, and I really did enjoy this, and again, it's a testament to the IP usage, of course, as well, but each hero does actually feel like the hero. So, for instance, we have Hulk here, and Hulk starts with more health, and also his blue is a gamma rage, where every time he gets hurt, he actually gains power, so he gets angry as you hurt him, which is very Hulk-ish, if that makes sense. Then you have stuff like, Thunderclap and all these other fun moves. Or you can have Spider-Man here, and his first one is he can actually, use his webs to, pull people out of danger, because he's all about saving innocent people, right? That's Spider-Man through and through. So he has his heroic rescue that he can do. Or Wasp, because she's tiny and can just, zip around and gets a slippery thing, right? That doesn't get affected by enemies, stuff like that. It's very thematic, I felt, when it comes to really being able to use each one differently. Black Panther here, for instance, actually has a hard slash as a blue. It's pretty much a boss killer. It actually lowers their toughness, makes them easier to hit. Essentially, it's like giving him a free success on them. So he can very much just take on either a whole lot of, really tough brutes or a boss. He's the guy you send in there to really mess him up. Right? So it's really nice to see the variety there and how thematic it is. And I felt each one was fairly different. When you're playing as Wasp, you're doing one thing. When you're playing as Wasp or Spider-Man, you're kind of doing another. And then as Hulk, you feel like you're in another role entirely. And that was really nice to see. So while the variety of people aren't that much, the only other two I didn't mention are Vision, who again, fairly thematic in how he does. He's kind of a support character. And then the Winter Soldier. But that's really kind of your option. So the variety isn't huge, but I really felt each one stands out very, very well. And I was quite happy with it. The same could be said for the zombie heroes. For instance, this is Zombie Doctor Strange, and each of them, there's only 4, but each of them has their own amount of health and then also their own special abilities right here. And it makes each one feel special. So for instance, Doctor Strange just teleports to the closest unit. He can just use his magic to blip into you. So you can be on the other side of the map and you are not safe from Doctor Strange. And that's different than any other zombie hero that's available, at least in this core game. I mean, none of the others, they all have just 2 movement up to, right? Whereas he's just like, I don't care. I'm right here now because you're the closest or whatever. So that was very cool to see. Iron Man, for instance, can shoot his laser, so he gets essentially an extra attack, or he can attack melee and ranged, for example. So there's a lot of different stuff there. There's debuffs that they can do. Each one you kind of have to tackle in a different way, or at least be aware of how they act, because it can actually be different. And I really did appreciate that. It is very much like having multiple abominations, with each one being quite unique. And they've done a very good job with that when you buy a whole bunch of boxes, typically, because each box will typically only have 1, maybe 2 abominations. This one came with 4, and they're all really, really nice. So well done there. I really enjoyed fighting them. They were all different and all scary. Okay, let's do some more rapid fire ones. There's not enough dice. You get 6 dice. They are custom. That is very nice. However, one of the abilities is you can spend power to add dice. And so you can imagine how quickly that means that you can spam it. Because you're going to have up to 4 power, you can pump that up to 4 dice. That's all but 2 of them already. So if you roll 3, guess what? You need an extra one. So we had to go grab one. They didn't give you enough. I'm never a fan of that. Dice are incredibly cheap. They are one of the least expensive things you can put in there. If you've put 6, you can put 7. It's why you get games like Oathsworn that has like 40 dice in it. It doesn't actually cost that much. It's not really a cost-saving thing. I have no idea why they didn't do that, unless, of course, they sell dice packs, in which case now you know why they didn't put as many in there, so you'd actually have to buy the fix for it. But we just simply added 1 or 2, and we're good to go. But it is kind of unfortunate. I really hate that. I feel a box should support itself and be playable upon itself, and not have to have external things added to it to make it really work. And making it to where you can do an attack that exceeds the dice values you have is always dumb, and will always be a negative on any review I ever do. That was dumb. So yeah, that should include at least 1 extra dice. Now, this might be something you guys disagree with me with here, but I personally am overjoyed that the noise mechanic is gone. I don't like the noise mechanic. I get that it's a little bit more thematic, but if you're wanting a purely thematic, hardcore, we have a mechanic to track every little thing, then Zombicide's not the game you want to be playing anyway. So the idea of having to manage and micromanage noise and put them on there and remove them and make sure you add one for each person in there, and whether or not you shot your gun or did whatever, was highly annoying, just because it didn't always even affect everything, and it was one of the most cumbersome things you did with the game besides moving the zombies. This solves moving the zombies, and it gets rid of the noise mechanic. Instead, they pretty much just target the closest person they see, which kind of makes sense, right? They're not going to be like, oh, I can see you right here, but it's more loud here, and I get it can break ties and all that, but it was a whole involved thing where you constantly had to put tokens on and remove them, or you forgot to remove them, or you forgot to put them on, or you didn't count the amount of people in there plus the noise or whatever. It was just way more effort for what you got out of it, and I'm very glad that it's gone. This does not have a noise mechanic. They just go to the person that has the most, or the closest, and they attack them. And it's so quick and easy to play that way, and a benefit to the game that's so streamlined already to really just flow smoothly. This is a game where you can sit down and play multiple sessions in a row. I did that every time. We never just sat and played one. They were like 45 minutes to like 60 minutes. So if you got 2.5 hours to play, you can possibly play 3 games of this. And you just keep going through it, and it's fun each time. So I'm glad I don't have to change the board state so often and all that. It really benefits from it, I feel. Okay, you guys saw this in the unboxing. I'm not going to bother showing you at this distance anyway, but there is an unboxing you can see. But the storage solution in here is great. There is like no wasted space. It is exactly the size it needs to be. It fits nicely on the shelf. It doesn't take up a lot of space, and it is crammed full of these cards, these standees, the dice, the dials, the minis. It's there, and you're not feeling like you just bought a whole bunch of air that you now have to store on there. When it comes to possible expansions, which we'll mention in a little bit, it'll probably be its own separate box. You can't do a whole lot of condensing here because it's the size it needs to be, which I very much appreciate. Now, I know you didn't think I was going to go through this entire review without mentioning the miniatures. These miniatures are really, really nice. They're really good. They're fairly dynamic. A lot of them are multi-piece. They have sculpted bases. I'll probably show a picture or something like that from my unboxing just so you can see in general, maybe even a render, but there is an unboxing to see it. But they're very well done. They're definitely high quality, and I'm very happy with them. Again, especially for $35 to get some IP branded official Marvel minis. They're good size. The scale's good on them, and I'm just thoroughly happy with them. I feel like I definitely got what I paid for, and then some, and that's always a good feeling to have. Now, I want to end this review with one last note, and that's that I think this review only gets better, not worse, over time. And the reason is because most of the negatives I mentioned, for instance, my largest negative is lack of variety. You get this Avenger symbol, which allows you to do something special, kind of like the turrets and invaders, stuff like that. But you only get the one, right? But guess what the rules say? The rules say, hey, guess what? Future expansions could add more of these, which brings me to the possibility of future expansions. Don't feel like the Bystander is enough variety? Guess what? If there's future expansions and they're cheap, like the $35 option, you can fix that. More enemy variety, you can fix that. More hero options, you can fix that. A lot more missions to play, you can fix that. Expansions would greatly, I think, improve this game, and improve all of them. It's kind of reciprocal, right? Because then these heroes can go in that mission's expansions and play new stuff, and those heroes can go in this one, and it would just be a lot of fun to have more zombie heroes, more enemies, different heroic traits, more bystanders, just all that kind of stuff just adds value to this. And honestly, I mean, at 35, you can only, complain so much. I try to compare what you're getting for what you're paying, of course, right? And you're not paying a whole lot for this, for what it is. That I'm satisfied with it, but I could certainly enjoy more variety, and I'm certainly going to buy any expansions they come out with. I'm really excited for that, guys. I think that'll fix so many of the issues I have here, which I still enjoyed every game I played. So, I mean, I still had a lot of fun with I always do with Zombicide. It's just fun. It's enjoyable. My kids got a big kick out of it. The IP helped so much with that. They really enjoyed picking their favorite hero and playing as them and feeling like they're super cool and, kind of saving the world. So anyway, that's it. That's my review of Marvel Zombies, specifically the Heroes Resistance version of it. But that's more of a component thing than an actual gameplay thing. So take that as you will. If you have any questions, of course, leave them down below. I'll go ahead and be down there myself to discuss this with you. And let me know what you think about expansions on this, or, smaller entry prices like this, or would you rather have, some big box that has a whole bunch, or would you rather be able to kind of piecemeal it out like this? Love to hear your thoughts down below. Guys, thank you so much for watching. As always, have a great rest of your day. Take care. Bye, guys.